Hello, it's Reija and welcome to another video. It's time for the second week of my manga reading. As you know, I am trying to read 30 manga in 30 days or a manga every single day during November. And I have to say that as of the filming of this second week reading vlog, I am actually one volume behind on my challenge because things have happened and I haven't been able to read as much. So I am slowly getting behind. Hopefully I will be able to remedy that this upcoming week, this third week. So yeah, without further ado, I will let past Reija tell you all about their reading experiences. Okay, so time to start the second week of the whole 30 manga in 30 days challenge. It is Wednesday, currently November 9th, and I have managed to read 2 manga this week, starting with Spy X Family Volume 6 by Tatsuya Endo. This is one of my favorite ongoing manga series, and I really enjoyed this volume. Still, it is not my favorite because, it was fine. The main, half of the volume takes place in this tennis tournament, like Lloyd and Twilight and Nightfall go on this mission together, and Agent Nightfall has this huge crush and kind of obsession with Twilight. Similarly, kind of how Yor's brother has an obsession about Yor, but obviously in this case it's a romantic context. Anyway, they go on this mission together, and while it was funny and fun, I just don't like Nightfall as a character that much. She isn't all that interesting to me, so for me, that section dragged a little bit. When we got to Anya, though, Anya is always a treat. She is the heart and soul of this whole series. So when we got to Anya, I really liked those sections a lot more. So I gave this 4 stars, really enjoyed this. And then I read Wave, Listen to Me, Volume 1 by Hiroaki Samura, and this is translated by Adam Hirsch, and actually the Spy X Family volume is translated also. Who is it translated by? The Spy X Family translation was done by Casey Loe, so always remember to credit your translators, so yeah. So I read Wave, Listen to Me, Volume 1 by Hiroaki Samura. This actually started serialization in Japan in 2014, so the series has been going on at least 7 years. I'm not sure if it is still ongoing in Japan, but it has been picked up for English translation since 2020. So English translations have been coming out since 2020. I have read Hiroaki Samura's previous work, which was Blade of the Immortal, which I really liked. And this is very different from that. Instead of being like a historical fiction gore fest, this is a contemporary sort of love story, a dramedy, I should say, and it takes place at this radio station where the main character of Minare is sort of scouted to become a late night radio host, and yeah, romance may ensue. And I just really enjoyed this. This was fun, and I like Minare as a character. She's very bitchy and obnoxious, and that can be very annoying. But I think that Hiroaki Samura has this really, he knows how to craft different kinds of female characters. This manga already, in the first volume, has a ton of different types of female characters. So and I just liked how Minare was written, her being really assertive and blunt and aggressive, is pointed out to is pointed out as being obnoxious by other characters, but I just think that just made her more likable to me. Yeah, so I quite enjoyed this, and I will definitely be picking up the second volume. I really enjoyed this. And I learned so much about radio hosting that I never knew before, so yeah. So hello, it is now Sunday, so it's been a whole hecking week. I did manage to read, and I am on schedule with all my manga reading, and tomorrow I will have to read 1 more volume, and then I will have the second week wrapped up. And this week I haven't. I've been working a lot, and I've had some other things happening, like I've had to socialize and stuff. So I haven't been able to vlog as much, but I have been reading. So I have read volumes 2 and 3 of Monster and the Beast by Renji, and these are translated by, who is the translator? Taylor Engel is the translator. I think Taylor Engel also does the translations for Delicious in Dungeon, I think. But yeah, this is basically a BL manga series with surprisingly intricate world building and also intricate political happenstances. It is quite the slow burn between the monster and this older gentleman over here, who is implied to be some sort of sorcerer, and it also kind of plays around with the idea of like who is actually the monster in the relationship, because Kavo, who is the sort of like outward appearance-wise should be deemed the monster, is very like naive and like doesn't know the ways of the world, whereas Liam, who is the gentleman here, is way more like conniving, calculating, and manipulating, and it is kind of like implied that he might be more monstrous than Kavo is. And I actually don't want to rate these because once again, this is like erotica, and the plot the plot is there. There's actually like a pretty decent plot here, but the plot is second fiddle to the actual smut, and the climax of the story is to get these two together and to have them perform sexual acts. That is like what the plot is there for. It is a vehicle for these characters to get it on, not the other way around. And I actually quite enjoy this. The art style is very clean and simplified, with a lot of emphasis being put on the characters' faces and expressions, and everything else is pretty streamlined and very clean. The ink lines are like machine precision level, like it is very like crisp and clean. So if you are someone who likes more like sketchy art style, I think that this may look a little bit too manufactured for your taste, but I personally quite enjoy it. So yeah, I'm very, very happily continuing on with this series. And then I read You Are My Happiness by Bukuro Yamada, and this was translated by Mike Wolfe. And it is really interesting. I was expecting it to be a lot more like gory, and sort of like body horror-esque, from what I was like gathering, like glimpsing it and flipping through it when I decided to buy it. But like it is actually more like sort of psychological horror, and doesn't actually have too much like gore or body horror elements. There are like some allusions and instances to stuff like that, but they are very mild. What is interesting is that the author actually meant for this to be a full-on like horror story, and then sort of put it in the sock drawer and came back to it and sort of like rewrote it to be BL. So it is like boys love with a horror element, which is really interesting. There's also another like side story at the end that is sort of like a short story involving completely different characters, and that is not affiliated with the main story here. Basically, this is a story about these two guys who one of them is a guy who has demon wings and a tail for reasons that are unexplained, and then the other person is like a complete yes man, like he doesn't say no to anything. And then the other guy comes across him and sort of like asks him to become his sort of like basically perform sexual favors for him, and the other guy says yes. And yeah, I quite liked the art style. This has very like that sort of scratchy and very like sketchy, inky art style, which I quite like. I also quite enjoy that this actually has on-page safe sex. Like the guys are using condoms, which is like not very common in these types of stories. So I'm very happy that that was introduced. Plot-wise, I will say that I got really confused because like some aspects just kind of like happen, um, and are brought to the reader's attention without any sort of foreshadowing or like previous setup. So things just sort of like happen without any explanation, which was like very confusing to me. But once again, this is a story that focuses mostly on the erotica, so I will not like rate it. It was very like mid tier to me though. So if you are interested in a sort of like psychological horror bent in your BL erotica, you might want to give this a go. But this is, in my opinion, not really like it doesn't stand out from the crowd, and I actually would say that I'm gonna keep this mostly because the whole presentation of the physical edition is very nice. This has um, like a dust jacket, and then the actual naked cover also has some art, and this the paper is very good quality, and the printing quality is great. So as a physical item, this is a keeper, but story-wise, I doubt that I will necessarily come to read it again all that often. And then I read the short story collection by Moto Hagio, A Drunken Dream and Other Stories, and I will say that this just goes to show why Moto Hagio is a legend in the field and why she's so revered. This is basically like has like 9 or 10 stories in the collection, plus an essay by the translator about the 49 group of shoujo authors who basically pioneered the genre in the 70s, and also an interview with Moto Hagio as well. So the 10 short stories are chronologically in the publication order. They are presented in this collection, and they are stories from 1977 to 2008. So you can clearly see an evolution of not only Moto Hagio's art style, but also her storytelling. And there are stories that are more like science fiction, there are more contemporary stories, and some stories that have a kind of like a magical quality to them. And I really like this. Like, if you have a chance to pick this pick this short story collection up, I would really recommend it. Not only are the stories like really thought provoking and actually tackle some really interesting ideas. Like one story is basically about like postpartum depression and also like favoritism when a parent like favors one child over the other or projects their own insecurities towards their child, and how that can cause like a generational cycle. That was interesting. um like there were really cool ideas in this collection, so I would really recommend it. And Moto Hagio's art style is super like ethereal, very clean, uh, and very like romantic. They're like the character expressions are to die for here. So yeah, I really really like this. Um, would you believe it? But it is Wednesday, November 16th, and due to extenuating circumstances, I am a bit behind in my manga reading. It is day 16, and I have finished 15 volumes, and it is already almost like nighttime. So yeah, things happened. I busted my arm at work, so I had a sprain, or I still do actually. So it happened like the other day, and I have to wear this for the next week or so, um, so that my arm can heal. It isn't broken, which is great because I was worried. I basically fell and rolled over my wrist because I am talented, and never underestimate the ways in which I can damage myself because considering how faulty my joints are, it is a miracle that I didn't break it. So yeah, that was great. So I have been reading the first 2 volumes of Asadora by Naoki Urasawa, and this is his newest series that is currently being translated into English. And you may know Naoki Urasawa from writing Monster, which is one of my favorite manga series of all time. Also, 20th Century Boys, which is also one of my favorites. He has also adapted, was it Pluto 9, which was originally created by Osamu Tezuka. But I haven't read that one personally. But basically, Naoki Urasawa is great. Like, he's a great artist and he's a great storyteller, and these are no exceptions. Basically, like 5 stars. This is a sort of historical fiction, but also alternative history and also creature feature science fiction. It's great. It, like, Naoki Urasawa sets up characters in really like subtle ways. Like, you can just see from the way these characters react and how they express themselves in like facial expressions and gestures, what they're thinking, and he's very masterful at like showing character through like just facial expressions and silhouette and like just the posture of the characters. And the way he sets up each chapter is that each chapter kind of starts from a kind of like hook that does not necessarily have to do with the rest of the like volume, or I should say that each volume starts with a hook that like basically teases what is happening in the future timeline or what is happening in a side story, and then it goes on to like deal with what is happening with the main character Asa. And then there are these like really cool cliffhangers. So these are like endlessly readable, like you want to keep going. And it's also like an interesting depiction of post-war Japan in the 50s and 60s, and what the attitudes of people were after the World War II. And yeah, this one was great. It's like the main character at the start of the series is 12 years old, and she is from a family that has like 12 children. And then the Isewon typhoon happens. So the story starts in 1959, and the greatest typhoon that has ever hit Japan hits, and like 5,000 people die, give or take, and she loses like the majority of her family. So that happens in like the first volume, and then she gets introduced to this old pilot who was a bomber airplane pilot in the war, and he teaches her how to fly. And there's also a monster. So I don't know how to explain it other than this is just so cool. Like, what 20th Century Boys does to sort of like the kind of like surveillance state, and sort of like this like there's so much like psychological thrill in Naoki Urasawa's work. Like in 20th Century Boys, it's like this fascistic regime that takes over the entire country, and there's a past timeline and a future timeline, and how those intermingle, and what the characters are like how did that fascistic regime come into power, etc. And then Monster is all about catching a murderer, and like it's really terrifying. And then this one is all about like this mysterious monster, and like I love it. I love Naoki Urasawa's work. So yeah, this has been a great start to this series. I'm definitely going to keep collecting this. And I also enjoy that Urasawa has like a central female main character this time. Like there are major main characters who are women in 20th Century Boys and Monster as well. However, in this, Asa is clearly the main character. She is the titular character as well, so that makes me very happy, and I'm very happy to continue this. And there you have it. This has been the second week of my manga reading, going a little bit over to the third week. But I am loving it. I am loving this challenge, even though it is quite stressful and I'm falling behind a little bit. But still, I always love pushing boundaries and pushing myself to new feats. So, genre-wise, I think there was a lot of emphasis on science fiction this week because Moto Hagio had a lot of like science fictional stories in her collection, and also Asadora can be categorized as science fiction. So I feel like this week had a little bit of a science fiction bent. And if you got this far, please leave me an airplane emoji so that I know that you are here, because Asadora features airplanes. And I will see you in another video very soon. Bye bye!